Forensic anthropology is a subdiscipline of biological or physical anthropology, and as part of this discipline studies human diversity at the biological level, but in this practical application aspect it uses this knowledge to find differences, establish individualities, and ultimately identify people. It also helps to detect traumatic signs that can lead to establishing the cause and circumstances of death. According to the definition of the American Board of Forensic Anthropology, it's the application of the science or physical anthropology or biological anthropology to the legal process. It is divided into three important branches, related to as many branches of the anthropological science: forensic anthropology, forensic archaeology, and forensic cultural anthropology. Works in conjunction with the forensic archaeologist, the field criminologist, and the forensic physician. It also provides elements on the behavior of the perpetrator through evidence left at the scene and the antemortem, perimortem, and postmortem treatment given to the victim, using also auxiliary science such as taphonomy. Forensic anthropology has had a development in the world from differential mainly as a response of specific criteria of each country, especially in function of historical considerations regarding approach to forensic investigations and its professional organization, the role that the forensic anthropologist plays in them, and training systems. It was in the 80s when the forensic anthropology science focused on the medical knowledge application, biological processes in legal processes, turned into one of the field's most dynamic disciplinary in Latin America. So this is mainly because anthropology has been able to respond to social needs of countries upset by violence, where the premise has been the search of truth, justice, and reparation to the families of the victims of internal conflicts. So it can be considered as a fact that the beginnings of forensic anthropology they occurred in the old continent and what was in the United States, where there was a process of systematization and current use in matters of a medical legal nature of human identification problems in armed conflicts. In Latin America, the origin of forensic anthropology are found closely linked to the participation of forensic investigative specialists of violation of human rights. So, for no one, it's a secret that a large part of Latin American countries, mainly in the second half of the 20th century, they were victims of regimes in which groups led since the state commit excess against the civilian population, torture being common, forced disappearance, and death of people who oppose his policies. One example of this happened in countries like Argentina, Guatemala, Honduras, Chile, and El Salvador, among others, are presented staggering numbers of people killed and abandoned in mass graves clandestine during their regimes. In Mexico, forensic physical anthropology, also forensic medicine, had its origin in the work carried out by doctors Francisco Martinez Vaca and Manuel Vergara in the old penitentiary in the city of Puebla. In this place, both researchers carried out their scientific activities at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, within the context of the predominant positivist during the government of President Porfirio Diaz. His most important contributions were in the field of what came to be called criminal anthropology, in which a characteristic anthropological approach of the time prevailed. The place of man in nature and his physical activity subject to strict laws within the proposed of identify the particularities of the criminal man in association with his racial background, sex, geographical origin, and social environment in which they were born and developed. The current Mexican context is alarming. Since 2006 and until September 30 of the present, 4,092 clandestine graves have been located, of which 6,900 of the bodies of the more than 77,000 people reported as missing in our country have been exhumed. To speak of clandestine graves involves at least two specialties of anthropology, physical anthropology and archaeology. The first helps in the location, registration, and recovery of people who were illegally buried or abandoned on the surface in insulated places, while the second participates in the process of identifying the recovered bodies. Both tasks are of the utmost importance to reconstruct the truth and give certainty to families who are looking for their loved ones. Forensic anthropology has existed in Mexico for more than 6 decades. Despite this, by 2019, only 17 states, which is 53.30% of the total, had a specialist in physical anthropology, and only 2 of them had archaeologists. Just the 6.25% there is a deficit of 96.87% of the total numbers of experts need to meet the minimum needs of the country. The discovery of the majority of clandestine graves has been the product of the experience that collectives of relatives of disappeared persons have accumulated during all these years, and they have been searching. It is the families, not the government, who have the specialized knowledge obtained as a result of a tragedy and who summon those who studies a professional career to join the research searches. These groups have the methodological and legal tools to carry them out in an effort driven by unconditional love for their absent family members. There are some institutions that are involved in this discipline, like the Center of Research and Higher Studies in Social Anthropology, or CSAS, and the National School of Anthropology and History, ENA. And also there are groups of experts and independent experts, such as Mexican Forensic Anthropology Team and the Research Group in Social and Forensic Anthropology. Also, there are increasingly frequent involvement of professionals trained in psychology and sociology. And there are like National Brigade for the Search for Disappeared Persons and the Movement of Or Disappeared in Mexico. The main problems in the forensic anthropology panorama in Mexico are 5. The first is the lack of convocation by the state to integrate anthropologists and the anthropologists in the prosecutor offices like procuradurías and search commissions. The 2 is there are not enough educational programs to train specialists in forensic anthropology in the country. Even so, the efforts made by institutions such as ENA with a specialty in forensic anthropology and training programs carried out by the National Autonomous University of Mexico, National Institute of Criminal Science. The 3 is among specialists, forensic anthropology is now considered a feasible field of work. This despite the constant demand from family members in search and the serious crisis faced by those who in the past years were subcontracted by the National Institute of Anthropology and History which had to make important cuts due to 75% reduction in the budget. And 4. The lack of empathy or ignorance on the part of the scientists of the reality that family members in search experience despite the multiple marches, demonstrations, and publications of all kinds and film productions that expose the suffering that families in search experience daily. And the 5. The general fear of the Union to get involved in issues that imply significant security risks, although distancing ourselves for this labor field doesn't accept us from being victims of the growing violence in our country. So the missing persons search groups continue to demand the knowledge of experts in physical anthropology and forensic archaeology, and the capacities of the states will continue to be exceeded due to the constant increase in violence and the lack of trained personnel.
With all this context behind non-physical anthropology, especially forensic anthropology, what I would like to contribute is the creation of a DNA databases throughout the country. This is because this is one of the biggest problems in the field of identifying bone remains in clandestine graves. So the families of the disappeared and victims of feminicide, in addition to fighting with the judicial and bureaucratic system, should not fight for the inefficiency of science has to identify their people. So yeah, and there really it is a lot to do, and to be honest, I don't think that my generation will see immediate change. So, in addition to the fact that exercising this discipline is very dangerous due to the involvement of the drug trafficking and the precarious salaries, however, I consider it encouraging to want to make a change on this issue that is extremely frequent and painful for the entire country, but it's a hope. And this is what I want to contribute.